Well, hi, friends. It's Terry again, pastor of our single adult ministries here at North Coast, and welcome to this edition of the Daily Dose, where this week we've been talking about the armor of God. You know, the helmet of salvation is another part and piece of the armor of God that Paul discusses in Ephesians 6. In the Roman army of Paul's times, the helmet was so important because one hit to the head would wipe the soldier completely out, and so it would lead to instant death. And really, when we think about it, it's no different than the spiritual battles we engage in every day today. In fact, the moment you put your faith in Christ and became a Christian, our enemy, the devil, waged war on your heart, mind, and soul. Our enemy, the devil, is constantly trying to put thoughts into our heads that will separate us from Christ and living the way he calls us to. He tempts us, he tricks us, and then he condemns us. Isn't that crazy? But thankfully, the helmet of salvation is a free gift of God, and yet we need to accept it and utilize it. The helmet of salvation protects us from the enemy's schemes, but we have a role to play. It's kind of like when I think about the fact that I ride a motorcycle, and in spite of California law, I wouldn't think of jumping on the bike without putting on that helmet. I think of the times when a rock has hit my helmet, and later on when I've taken the helmet off and I look at it and there's a big dent or gash in the helmet itself, I think, man, that could have been my head. Or when a bug hits the windscreen and I think that could have been in my eye, right? So thankfully, the helmet of salvation protects us from those things. And when we put it on, we protect our minds and what we think about. Every day we're tempted to go in directions we never would. And this is why the helmet of salvation is so important. It's a thing that it's one of these things that I like to think about in the context of, as a temptation comes into my head, I like to think, is it going to help me or is it going to hurt me in my relationship with Jesus? You know, and there are so many great verses that speak to this idea of protecting our minds from the temptations of the evil one and what to do when it strikes. Renew our minds, transform our minds. But the secular writers speak to this as well. In fact, the great poet Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "Sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap character. Sow character and you'll reap a destiny." It's true, isn't it? Our destiny is tied directly to and starts with our thoughts. It's been said, and I think it holds true, that whatever we think about tends to expand. So think about the last time you were tempted in a way that led to sin. Didn't it start in your thoughts? How many times have the spiritual battles in your life been lost by what you've continued to think about? You know, this week in our life group homework, the question was asked, and I really think it's true in that it points us to the idea of God wins in the end. And so the question is, when you are in the middle of a battle or difficult season, what is more your default response? Focusing on the moment in front of you or remembering God's victory in the end? The helmet of salvation also protects us from the enemy's schemes when we remember that, in the end, God wins, and we are victorious through our faith in Christ. Put on the helmet of salvation and keep it on. We'll see you next time.